Hello, everyone. I just wanted to do a brief sort of overview video on the second unit of the course, reading Jonas's The Burden and Blessing of Mortality and Glenn Gray's The Idea of Death and Existentialism. I think that in the second unit, things open up considerably. Unit one, really, once we get to Nagel and Bruckner and Fisher, is very specific. I wouldn't say narrow, but specific in its concentration on this very definite question, whether death is bad for the person who dies. And really, we're thinking about death here. We're focusing on the event of death, if death is an event. It becomes kind of a questionable thing once sort of Epicurean message that death is nothing sinks in. But definitely a focus on death as a phenomenon or occurrence. Again, if you can even say that about death. But what I mean to be getting at is that Unit 2 is not really about death so much as it is about mortality. We can think of death as an event, an occurrence. We might, if we were to be Epicurean about it, we might feel more comfortable talking about it as a limit, as an ending, a termination. But mortality is much easier to grasp, I think, than death, in the sense that maybe we don't really know what death is, but we know that we're going to die, and that is the real message or the real starting point of both of these readings. It's not so much that either of them offer us anything like an Epicurean theory of death. We'll have to wait for Plato, actually, in Unit 3 to get something like an alternative to the Epicurean theory of death. That is a general statement about what happens to us when we die. Neither Jonas nor Gray really offer that. They're really not interested in that. There's no really deep suggestion here about what death is, because their concern is not with what death is, but what it's like to be the kind of creature that knows that it will die, which is more or less mortality. So if death is an event or a limit or an occurrence or an ending, mortality is a condition of being. None of us have ever died, but all of us are mortal. So we live with that condition every day. That is the condition of being the kind of being that can and will die. These two essays are really trying to make sense of that condition, the condition of mortality, as opposed to the event of death, let's say. And that's why I put them together. I don't want to get into the specifics of either reading. That's what the videos are for. But I just wanted to get that across, that really the theme here in Unit 2 is mortality. That is the condition of being the kind of creature that can die, that is faced with the constant possibility of death, as well as the ultimate inevitability of death. And there I'm really drawing upon Jonas's distinction between the can die and the will die, the first of which he calls the burden, the second of which he calls the blessing, which is an interesting idea. And Gray, too, is really, although his ideas are really just meant to explain what he takes these other philosophers to be getting at, it's really ultimately about being mortal, being the kind of creature that's faced ultimately with their own finitude, with death.